Greetings fellow Whovians and welcome to Timey Review. As we approach a new era for Doctor Who, let's talk about the previous era, which, if you are led to believe, was steeped in controversy. Some of you loved it, some of you absolutely hated it. It brought out a toxicity into the Doctor Who fandom. We had RIP Doctor Who 1963 to 2017. Boo! And I'm not saying boo-earns. Yeah, let's talk about the Chris Chibnall era. Yes, there have been a wave of negativity surrounding Doctor Who, in particular the Chris Chibnall era, which we're still kind of dealing with at this moment in time. And I just thought it'd be a good time to ask the question, was it really that bad? So please hit the subscribe button. That will really help out this channel as I talk about the Chris Chibnall era. Again, was it really that bad? Our journey begins back to January 2016, where the BBC announced that Chris Chibnall is going to take over as the new Doctor Who showrunner in replacing Stephen Moffat. And I was a little bit surprised by this move at first. I generally thought that it was going to be Mark Gatiss that would have been taking over, maybe with some assistance with Neil Gaiman. But I think probably looking back, Mark Gatiss would have been a bit too busy with other projects with Stephen Moffat at the time, particularly Sherlock, the TV version of Sherlock. But on a BBC perspective, yeah, I can see why they went for Chris Chibnall. You know, he falling off the back of the huge success that was Broadchurch on ITV. I imagine the BBC found him as a safe pair of hands, and obviously having a dab hand with Doctor Who previously, writing some episodes for the show, and of course Torchwood. And yeah, I was kind of in the sort of pro positivity camp on that one, and I did start to see some seeds of doubt creeping in from the Whoniverse, from fellow Whovians, particularly the episodes that Chris Chibnall has written, particularly Cyberwoman for Torchwood. And it was around that time that the TV clip from Open Air, which was kind of like a point of view type of television review program back in the 80s, where Chris Chibnall appeared as part of the Doctor Who Appreciation Society that he was with. I'm pretty much slating Doctor Who at that point. This was during the Sixth Doctor era in the 80s, and I think it was during the Trial of the Time Lord season. So yeah, there was pretty much a video where Chris Chibnall was not a big fan of what was being produced for the show at that time. And I think it was something that was going to bite him on the backside in the future when all's said and done. But to be fair, Chibnall did kind of apologise about that, and yeah, pretty much admitted that young me was very, very stupid in criticising the show at the time. So fair play to him for going back and apologising and making amends. But hey, they've got a new show to create, a new era, going into a brand new direction, and they certainly did that in July 2017 when they announced during the Wimbledon final that Jodie Whittaker was to become the 13th Doctor, the very first female incarnation of the Doctor. And for me, this wasn't like a massive surprise. This was something I would say a long time coming in terms of what they were building in the previous era, the Stephen Moffat era, with the Master to Missy, and we were seeing some other Time Lord characters changing genders as well. And I'm not going to lie, when this was announced, one, I wasn't surprised, but two, I was a little bit skeptical. Not for Jodie's performance herself, it was more the writing has got to be absolutely on point, top of the game, and above. So, you know, and that this was coming from a time as well that there was the female version of Ghostbusters, which didn't quite go down well, and there was definitely a lot of backlash from this choice of actor or actress to become the Doctor. So yeah, there was a lot of negativity starting to appear. Like I said, my take on it was the writing has got to be absolutely A grade for Jodie to be this version of the Doctor, because they were already fighting an uphill battle already. Some criticizingly so, some unnecessary, but that in that regard. But hey, we still got to rein in the changes, and the changes they did. So we had new music with Segun Akinola. We had new characters new actors to be the companions in the form of Bradley Walsh, Tosin Cole, and Mandy McGill. We've got a new Doctor Who logo, so things were starting to look a little bit exciting in the world of Doctor Who. And in October 2018, we got the very first episode for the 13th Doctor in Series 11, The Woman That Fell to Earth. So for this critique or review, whatever you want to call it, I'm going to sort of narrow it down to the categories of the companions. I'm going to talk about the stories and talk about the 13th Doctor herself. So starting with the stories. So yeah, The Woman That Fell to Earth, I thought it was again a pretty safe but fun introduction of this brand new era of Doctor Who. And for me, it could only get better. Did that first series 11, get any better? I think it was a bit bumpy, if I was going to be very honest with you. Particularly the season finale for season 11, I think it was quite forgettable. Fair play to Chibnall, writing what he wanted to write. He didn't rely on any previous classic monsters or villains or anything really connected in Doctor Who in that regard. He was strutting out on his own with his brand new team, the brand new fam, I think they were called fam at that point. And yeah, it led to, like I said, a very mixed bag of episodes. I'll say the highlights from Series 11 is definitely Demons of the Punjab and Rosa. But then we had, and to be honest, I quite like Kablam. I know a lot of you out there not a big fan of that. I thought it was okay. To be fair, I haven't watched it since its first aired back in 2018. I think I'll need to review that at some point in the future. But yeah, I thought it was okay. But as a series on the whole, it was very much a mixed bag. If I were going to do Series 11 of Doctor Who, if I was going to go back in time and I was the brain of Chris Chibnall, I would have listened to, which he probably was aware of, and I'm sure Jodie was aware of, but, you got to protect yourself because obviously at the time there were some very nasty comments coming out on social media, but I would have played into that a little bit in terms of, right, okay, we've got a new incarnation of the Doctor, very first female incarnation of the Doctor, and everyone's not a big fan of woke or whatever you want to sort of go into with that one, but it's something that I've not seen before in over 50 plus years, even though they were kind of rumouring that in the 80s. Joanna Lumley's name kept getting bantered around in the 80s for being the first female Doctor, but then got mooted. So, I would have leaned into that and gone, right, everyone's not thinking that, even if it was Jodie Whittaker or which female it is, there was going to be backlash. So let's play into that and go, right, let's strip away everything that the Doctor has, which is pretty much the TARDIS, which they kind of did when the 13th Doctor regenerated. The TARDIS disappeared. I would have kept that going all throughout the season. I would have kept the 13th Doctor on Earth with her new companions, Ryan, Graham, and Yaz, and do little shades of similarities of the Third Doctor era when the Third Doctor was in exile. I wouldn't go full on that they're working with UNIT again, but I would certainly have her stuck on Earth trying to find her TARDIS, which is bouncing around the universe. The Doctor is tracing it at some points, but basically bouncing around the universe because even the TARDIS can't recognise this incarnation of the Doctor. I know it's a bit sort of far-fetched, but, let's play along with that. I'll kind of keep the stories that they did do in Series 11, but just make it more earthbound. And, we're basically seeing this incarnation of the Doctors having a bit of a rites to passage that what makes Doctor Who. First one being Sonic Screwdriver. She builds that. Our good old Sheffield Steel. We'll keep that in there. And maybe she does have an episode or two episodes with UNIT, with Kate Stewart. I would have brought back at least something familiar for the audience to sort of hook into in terms of UNIT, and maybe inviting the Doctor and the companions to join UNIT, just like the old days. But the Doctor said, no, I've got to move on. That's the past. this is me, and I've got to find my TARDIS with my friends. And that's another thing about a rites of passage. Her friends, her companions. We sort of build that up. Maybe have a bit of a a bit of a role reversal with the companions, but I'll get to that a little bit later. But yeah, we could have episodes where the Doctor makes a crude sort of time teleportation device, so they do go back to Alabama, and we can have the Rosa episode with the other time meddling villain that really didn't go anywhere but really should have done. Maybe that time traveler could have joined forces with Tim Shaw to just make that series 11 finale a little bit more sort of grander in its scope. It was just didn't quite, it, to me it's very forgettable. Again, I haven't watched it since, actually no, I have seen the series 11 finale since its televised one, and again I just find it a bit forgettable. But I could have leaned into that with something bigger on the horizon, into the New Year's Day special, which was the Doctor taking Dalek, the final rites of passage in terms of who is this Doctor, because really it's a bit sort of cheesy in the terms of sort of more mainstream audience, but the Doctor is not the Doctor until they fought the Daleks, really. And I would have leaned into that, and after that episode, the ending of Resolution, then the TARDIS comes back, basically telling the audience you've done this year-long journey, that this is the Doctor. Basically, she has earned her badge to be the Doctor. That's how I would have done series 11. Let me know in the comments if you agree or disagree with my loose storyboarding there. So after the lack of recognisable villains and monsters from series 11, I don't think Chris Chibnall made that mistake again, because from then on there was monsters aplenty. We had the Daleks, we had the Cybermen, we had Sontarans, we had Sea Devils. Okay, but also obviously we had the Master, and Sacha Dhawan as the Master was absolutely amazing. He was definitely one of the highlights from this era. I thought Chibnall and Sacha really worked well together in terms of obviously the script writing from Chibnall and how Sacha interpreted that script writing. I would say that if anything, Chibnall wrote the Master better than the Doctor. I think he sort of struggled to grasp what he might have wanted from the Doctor. Again, that's just my own opinion on that one, but I thought Chibnall's strength really on the whole throughout his tenure, throughout his era, was he knew how to write for villains and monsters. I thought the Sontarans during the Flux, he did a brilliant job with them. He made them easily the third strongest villains in the universe, next to the Daleks and the Cybermen, and that was no easy feat, because I know the Sontarans was used kind of differently during Moffat's era, and with them being on the Sarah Jane Adventures as well, they kind of made them look, it could have been seen as a little bit kiddified, but no, they were like a real warrior threat. Chris Chibnall certainly put his stamp on Doctor Who, really, particularly in the second season, series 12, with not only the introduction of the fugitive Doctor, again another stroke of genius there, just adds a lot of mystery to that character. I hope we get to see Jo Martin return. I know her and Sacha Dhawan are going into the Big Finish audio series coming up next year in January 2025, I believe. But and again, can't wait for Big Finish to have a go with these characters. But going back to this Chibnall era, the biggest sort of shocker really was the lore of the Doctor, the Timeless Child story arc. So let's talk about the Timeless Child story arc, and yeah, that's pretty much been a sort of a shock and a controversy, but not really. I don't know if it's been fully accepted by the Whoniverse. Again, let me know if you like it or not in the comments. For me, I thought it was surprising, maybe a little bit flawed, to be brutally honest. I was more sort of like, well, let's just see how it all plays out. It could be that the Master is lying. It could be that it's one of those stories. I just kind of felt when it was all announced, and looking back on it since, it felt similar to the Doctor Who TV movie with Paul McGann, where they mentioned that the Doctor's half human. It's going to be one of those things that they'll either, the next showrunner or next era of Doctor Who will either pick up on or just drop like a lead balloon. And I feel that this is going to be one of those that will eventually maybe quietly go away. I know Russell T Davies has kind of mentioned it during the giggle and a little bit in the church on the Church of Ruby Road. So it's something that could get picked up again and someone else put their own spin on it. But it's another one that can just be quietly put into a box and to gather dust. And I feel like that's going to happen in this sort of one. So I'm not overly upset about it. I can understand people that could be upset about it in terms of changing the sort of lineage of the Doctor. But if they were going to revisit this again, I would basically make it so it was the Master that was lying and it's the Master that's the timeless child. It just makes more sense in my sort of headcanon for that to be so. What didn't help this timeless child story arc reveal is I'm pretty sure Chibnall did have a bit of a plan, or at least a certain roadmap into where to end the story or how to finish out the story. But then COVID happened. We had the pandemic, and that really just put plans to a grinding halt. And instead of that, we got the Flux 6-part story arc, which on the whole I thought was fine. Again, not stellar, not vintage Doctor Who, but it was fine. I liked the ending of it. I thought with the pocket watch and just giving Chibnall that get out of jail free card in terms of the Timeless Child story arc, I kind of like that with the watch and just I'll just dump it in the TARDIS console. I thought I was just I can't write it, but it gives someone else an opportunity to write it if they wanted to. Because, to make any program during that pandemic would have been nigh on impossible to do. But the fact that Doctor Who, that can be a special effects heavy show, they managed to do something when at the time we were all clambering for entertainment. I say, thank you and well done for bringing something to us, especially in terms of Doctor Who, because it was definitely must have been a minefield to try and work that one out. There is a Who podcast out there that interviews Chris Chibnall in more depth, which I do recommend that you check out, because they do touch on that and how they logistically did these scenes in terms of the restrictions that there were during the pandemic, and the fact that they had to do lateral flow tests, which was obviously, it wasn't going to be done for free. It was going to cost them money, and that came out of the budget for the show as well, to keep people safe, more importantly. But the fact that they managed to do something during that pandemic is, for everyone involved, cast, crew, writers, directors, producers, they all should be commended for doing that. And after the missteps with series 11 and 12, and particularly the special The Legend of the Sea Devils, which definitely didn't quite hit the mark on that one, I was desperate for this era to go out with a bang. It needed that swan song. Everyone needed that swan song in there. And I say we did get that in The Power of the Doctor. I thought it was a very fun centenary special. We got some classic Who monsters. We got some classic Doctors, which was a great surprise. And it gave Jodie and Chris Chibnall the swan song that I think they deserved, really, on that one. Like I said, I really wanted that for them, and I think they got it. But in terms of the whole, in the era, in terms of stories, very much a mixed bag. Not a very vintage Doctor Who, but hey, let's talk a little bit in more focus, the companions. First up, we have Graham, played by Bradley Walsh, and his grandson Ryan, played by Tosin Cole. And I'd love Bradley Walsh, and I think Tosin Cole is a great actor, but was given nothing to do. Ryan had dyspraxia, something that they didn't really do anything with, I think, in my opinion, apart from struggling to learn how to ride a bike. They could have really there were definitely, you can argue there was tick boxes going on in terms of like, oh, we'll have an older person, we'll have someone with a disability, and then we'll have someone from a diverse community, which, I don't really go into. I think they should, Doctor Who is definitely the ambassadorial flag for all things diverse and equality, and it shouldn't be like, oh my god, shock horror, there's someone with a disability on the show and all that kind of jazz. No, I think it's great. Everyone aspires to be whoever they want to be, and if they see that on screen and go, hey, if they can do it, I want to do that. That's the power of television, and long may that continue, particularly in Doctor Who. If you are going to bring diversity or people with different disabilities or backgrounds, then make it count. And I don't think they did for poor Tosin as Ryan. I thought out of all the companions during this era, he definitely got the short end of the stick. I know he had some nice moments between him and the 13th Doctor and himself and his dad, that little reconciliation going on there, but it just, yeah, I think the damage was already done at that point. And then we move on to Graham, played by Bradley Walsh. Again, I thought it was a little bit wasted in this one, not drunk wasted, but missed opportunities there, because he is a really good actor. I know a lot of people recognize him more for being a TV presenter these days, but he is a very good actor, and he also appeared in Sarah Jane's Adventures as was it Odd Bob the Clown? Scary clown, one of the scariest clowns out there. Him and it can have a fight off, but he was a freaky clown. But again, they didn't really do anything with Graham. And if anything, again, going back to how we'd done series 11, obviously we had the death of Grace. I would have Graham as the reluctant traveller, who's very grumpy, blames the Doctor for the death of Grace, but is just here probably to sort of just make sure that this person leaves. Kind of a bit like a role reversal between Ian and the first Doctor, where Ian was the more sort of optimistic hero who will stand against nothing, where the first Doctor was more tetchy and grumpy. I would have done sort of role reversal on those. But yeah, they could have gave Graham more to do. We briefly had Dan, played by John Bishop, and when he came into the Flux from that story arc, he was definitely a breath of fresh air. I really loved John Bishop's performance there, and yeah, he was definitely the shining point from this era. Again, could have done a bit more with Dan, particularly when he gets dropped off in the Power of the Doctor. Couldn't the Doctor give him a house at the very least? Make him, yeah, they'll drop you off and you can still be homeless. Poor Dan. But yeah, I thought John Bishop was great. But that leads us to finally Yasmin Khan, played by Mandip Gill. And out of all four of those companions, I would say she was the one that had the most character development. Just to be honest. So, she was first Muslim companion, which again, fantastic, brilliant. Obviously, her background was she was working as a PCSO in Sheffield, or police officer, and they kind of did that in some areas, and then kind of did not. They just kept, it became convenient sometimes in terms of police background, whether it's Yaz is more useful or not. Again, it's just a shame. That's the downfall, really, is the character development for these companions are not the strongest and are not that memorable. But the one thing that was kind of coming in a little bit more organically and sort of more taken into a bit of a frenzy from the Whoniverse is Thasmin, the Doctor and Yaz. That relationship and going into the will they won't they romance. I applaud Chris Chibnall for recognizing it and adding it into part of the story, but I think maybe queerbaiting is a bit too harsh. I think he was in a damned if you do, damned if you don't moment, because obviously this is all produced and written far in advance. But You know, if he was going to write it in, do something with it. And I think he kind of recognized it, but took a very quick, easy way out. Again, it all depends on contract as well, whether Mandip Gill was staying or leaving at the time. But it would have been great if Mandip Gill stayed and had this different sort of approach to the Doctor, you know, particularly if the Doctor regenerated. I know it's taken a bit of a weird storyline from the comedy spoof of The Curse of Fatal Death, but taken into a serious light, it would have been good of like, you know, this isn't the person who I fell in love with. Do I still love the Doctor as a person rather than a sort of gender identity? That would have been a really good story to explore. Which brings us to the Doctor herself, the 13th Doctor, the first female Doctor, and Jodie Whittaker. And I said plenty of times on this channel that Jodie Whittaker was and still is a fantastic ambassador for Doctor Who. If anything, she's just a fan. She is an ultimate fan, and this is how I see her incarnation of the Doctor. She is seeing things with fresh new eyes and wonderment, and, you know, if anything, a Doctor with maybe letting go of the baggage of the past in terms of obviously Doctors 9, 10, and 11 and 12 still sort of healing from the Time War. This Doctor 13 is out there to have fun and explore and see things from a different perspective. And I felt that's what I got from Jodie from that, mainly from her sort of persona as well outside of Doctor Who. As terms of the character herself, again, Chibnall could have done better. Especially with the long expositions that poor Jodie was given, you know. Every Doctor gets exposition, but in terms of how it's done, it can make a massive difference. So sort of even walking through like long corridors, you know, there's bits of movement, that's, you know, it can break that down a bit and make it less obvious. But in Jodie's, or at least in Chibnall's era, it's quite a lot of Jodie standing around, maybe just slightly hunched over. So I'm hoping she didn't get a bad back doing this. Explaining a lot of the plot, you know, and it got a little bit repetitive at times, even though Jodie was doing well in terms of what she was saying, but it just made it way too obvious. And I feel with the caliber of an actress that she is, seeing her in Attack the Block and Black Mirror, she could have done so much more. And I felt that we got the best. I thought the best performance from Jodie was Village of the Angels. That episode, she was absolutely stellar, and that felt to me like the Doctor I want to see more of. Like I said, I'm not blaming Jodie or any of the cast in terms of their performances. I thought they definitely brought their all. There was definitely no phoning in on this one. Again, it's just needed more. Definitely needed more. Can't wait to see Jodie though. Eventually, hopefully, come to Big Finish Audio and see that incarnation of the Doctor being how Big Finish deals with that incarnation, and I hope she does come back to Doctor Who. From this reflection, was it a vintage Doctor Who era? No, not by any means. Do I think it was all terrible? No. Like I said, there were some great stories in there. Obviously bad ones like Orphan 55, but there's some great ones there too. Spyfall, really enjoyed that. The Haunting of Villa Diodati is an absolute underrated classic and definitely will be seen as one in probably a few years' time. Could he have done more in terms of the writing? Yes, I think it could have done. I think Chris Chibnall was definitely the safe pair of hands that the BBC were looking for, but I think it was a task too much for him. I think he is a great writer, and I'm glad that he is carrying on doing theatre work at the moment. Just to give him a bit of a break from Doctor Who as well. I think he needed some more support. Whether that was him asking for that or not giving that to him, I don't know. But I think there was a lot that he introduced to Doctor Who that really needed that final roadmap just to sort of finish it all off. I think he said it right, said it best during Power of the Doctor when the Doctor was regenerating and she said, "I need more time." To me, that she's saying that through Chris Chibnall. He needed more time to finish off everything that he wanted to do. Did he put a stamp on Doctor Who? Absolutely. Rightly or wrongly is always up to debate in terms of the Timeless Child story arc. But he definitely put his own spin on the history. He definitely did great stuff with the monsters and villains from the past. And he particularly steadied the Doctor Who ship when it was in a state of flux. I see this era very similar to the Colin Baker era in terms of maybe the lack of support from the BBC, particularly with the lack of advertisement and trailers during this era. There was none to be seen, or very little to be seen, albeit, yes, I know the BBC are struggling in terms of budgeting and things like that, but this is like your biggest selling international show. You need to look after this as much as the writers and the actors who are involved in the show, and obviously given their all. BBC needs to look after it from there, and I don't think they did a great job during this era in looking after the show. Like I said, in terms of the trailering and the interviews, I know obviously lockdown and pandemic made a mess of things as well, but there were ways and means to get out there that, hey, we've got a new show and this is brilliant. Particularly going back to BBC, putting it on a Sunday. That was a big, for me, big red flag. That is basically, you are digging your own grave here in terms of Doctor Who. For me, putting it on a Sunday, you are just advertising to the UK particularly that it's not the most important show. You know, it should have been on Saturday night prime time. No questions asked there. The BBC have learned from that with their joint venture with Disney and obviously bringing back Russell Davies to look after the show. And yeah, they can't afford to do that again because, yeah, it was, you know, looking back, it's criminal that they really did that to Doctor Who in terms of putting it on a Sunday, the lack of trailers and advertising, and even the Christmas specials being moved to New Year's because, particularly by what Chibnall said, it's too scary to be on Christmas, even though they have EastEnders. That is the most depressing, violent soap out there. Yeah, I don't buy that at all. I think, yeah, they really shot themselves in the foot with that one. But I'm glad lessons have been learned and moving forward. But what I will take from this era is, like I said, it's not the most vintage era of Doctor Who, but it was made out of love and effort, which always shines through, and I think has shined through. You know, Chibnall introducing the fugitive Doctor, introducing a new lineage for the Doctor Who, which you can take or leave, but there is stuff that can be played with. Jodie Whittaker playing the Doctor as a fan, as a love of life, and you know, we couldn't have had that without Chris Chibnall on the reign saying, yes, we are going to go full in there with a new female, very first female Doctor. And that's something you can never, ever take that away from them. Let me know in the comments below your thoughts to the Chris Chibnall era. Did you love it? Did you dislike it? What would you have done differently in this era? Did you agree with my storyboard writing of series 11, I should say? All opinions are welcome. I'd love to know all your thoughts in the comments, but let's please be respectful. We're all friends here. Thank you very much for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed it. If you have, please like, share and subscribe. Hit the clock bell for more notifications. Come say hello and follow me on Facebook and X, and do check out my other fantastic Doctor Who related content on the Timeline Review TikTok page and right here on the Timeline Review YouTube channel. Again, thanks for watching. Stay safe, and as a good doctor once said, tag, you're it.